Welcome to She Rebel Radio, a community-driven podcast dedicated to supporting women to unlearn conventional rules and create businesses of significance. Each season, She Rebel Radio brings you insights and advice from noteworthy women entrepreneurs who strive to create more meaning, impact, and purpose. Now here is your host, Lulu Minns.
Welcome to episode 76 of She Rebel Radio, Breaking the Habit of Necessary. It is the Friday after the Monday that we open up to a little bit more freedom here in the UK and in many places around the world, and many that have not got that freedom. So sending love to all of those places and knowing that, we've all been brought together this year by the 15 something months that we've had mostly in lockdown around the world. And what that does is create us to break a number of really good habits that we might have created, perhaps around our health, yoga, the gym, all of that stuff that we haven't been able to do, and perhaps around our businesses, being a regular at business networking, getting out and working in cafes, having one-to-ones. Maybe that's something that doesn't come particularly naturally to you as you started, and we haven't been able to do any of that stuff. Of course, we've been doing it all online. We're all exhausted of doing it online. But for today's episode, we're going to be diving into those necessary habits that we have created in lockdown when we've needed to batten down the hatches, find that sense of safety and security. And a habit can be empowering, right? Or it can be damn right annoying. And habits are patterns of behaviour that are very hard to break. It takes about 21 days to create a new habit. Now, as I said, we've had about 15 months. Certainly here in the UK, we had about 3 or 4 months of some weird kind of normal going on. But, we have really had to create these survival skills whilst we've been stuck at home. And today we're going to be talking about breaking the habit of necessary, those necessary things that we found ourselves doing in order to cope. They're kind of coping strategies, if you like. And today being the day that we start to break them. And I'm also going to talk about Billie Piper, Why the Hell Not? And that's where I'm actually going to start. So I was listening on Sunday to Desert Island Discs as per usual, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about listening to Billie Piper's episode, and it really reminded me of my school days, as I'm, I think, the same age as Billie Piper, and her song Why, Because We Want To. And I remember this particular day, it was the last day, I believe, of our exams. So, 16, probably around this time of year, actually, in terms of exams, and walking to school feeling super excited about the night out that we were going to have after finishing those exams. And I was with my best friend throughout all the school term, and still my best friend now, and she was dancing and skipping along to Why You Gotta Play That Song So Loud, because we want to. And I think doing lots of pouting and silly dancing, and had my best friend being my best friend hadn't really done her revision. I was a bit more studious, so she was more the rebel than me for sure. And we were really excited. What were we excited about? We were excited about breaking the habit of necessary. What had been the habit of necessary is that we weren't going out and partying like we used to. And believe me, we used to be pretty bad and have lots of fun because we had our exams. So, parents, all of that, we were lucky enough to have parents that placed some kind of restriction on us, although they were quite, free-spirited at the same time. They encouraged us to not go out and to get our heads down, to batten down the hatches, as I said, and get our work done, to create the necessary studying habits, etc., to do well in the exams, to lay that foundation for moving forward. And the song, which it made me laugh when I was listening to it on Sunday, and Why You Gotta Run Around in Crowds, because we can't quite do that yet with COVID. I know many of us may not be wanting to either, but there was also Why You Gotta Dance Around All Night. That's what we were excited about. Maybe that's what you're excited about with becoming free here in the UK. But it really indicates, and Billie Piper in the episode, that reminds me, was talking about, she picked a super weird song, Pure Imagination by Gene Wilder, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I find that song a little bit creepy, but she was saying that she, uses music to stimulate her imagination. So I wanted to use her song to stimulate your imagination in breaking the habit of necessary as we come out of lockdown. Because it's a super fun song. And when I was writing this episode and gathering some research and putting it together, I put it on to get myself in the mood of myself breaking the habit of necessary. Because I've certainly been speaking to my clients, those in the She Rebel Radio members group, and completing the online courses, which is part of that. This time round, it's felt the hardest to break that habit of necessary, in that we're kind of conditioned to stay at home, to do what it is that we've been doing for most of this year. Whereas previously, when we've had like the openings, the lockdown, it's rushing to that last yoga class or getting into that first yoga class, which I was going to do subject to my car breaking down. And, really enjoying our freedom and that pattern. But now everyone's a bit flat about it, in my opinion. There's been discussions about that on social media, with, again, many of the great women who attended our first She Rebel Roundtable, that everyone's like, I'm kind of, it kind of is what it is. We can do these things, but, we're not as excited about it as we were. And that is because the habit of necessary. The habits that we create, as I said, it takes only 21 days to make or even break a good habit or a bad habit. So, as I said, I tried to book a yoga class. However, and I was excited, but I wasn't as ready to get back into it as I have been when we've had those previous openings of freedom. So it takes that 21 days. We've had around 15 months. And my background in criminal defence, working with lifers, I, for a number of years, around 5 or 6 years, did a number of parole board hearings for lifers, for those that had got life sentences in prison, which, people mistakenly think, and we see it in the press all the time, of, life, and they only got 15 years. It actually means that you're on parole for life, and that you won't be released until you prove that you are safe and not a risk to the public. And then, if there is any action that is undertaken, if you are released or moved to open prisons, which is what usually happens, to give people a little bit of their freedom back, to see if they can cope with the responsibility of that freedom, then, you eventually move towards release. And there were so many problems with lifers because they're so conditioned to prison life, prison routine, and creating the habit of necessary, that they create habits to cope within that environment. And again, preparing this episode today is asking you to consider what behaviours you've perhaps created in order to cope in this environment in the last 15 months. I was about to say 15 years. Might have felt like 15 years, but it's 15 months. We've had all the home luxuries and things like that. And, I've joked at various moments of living down here in Cornwall of, champagne problems. I think when, not being able to see family at particular times, towards the end of the year, being locked in a house with beach views, champagne problems. So we've had a number of luxuries, but humans are humans. So it's very good to draw on human behaviour and see how we cope in these environments. And that just reminds me of a man's search for meaning. And maybe you've had a real spiritual and deep experience and found, when we find that we can cope in certain environments, we can really create a lot of wisdom from that place. So breaking the habit of necessary, what we're looking at today, rather than, maybe some really good habits that you've finally created. Maybe you've wanted to be meditating every day for the last 10 years and you've always been too busy and now all of a sudden you've found that time. Or maybe you had a really established meditation practice and it's fallen out of the window, So it's really about looking at how this has unfolded for you. And breaking the habit of necessary is about looking at what we've been doing. We've been doing what we must because we have to, because of that survival, because of that safety and security, to shifting the needle to doing what we want to do and embracing the freedom that we now have for however long that we may have that. So even if it's just one baby step at a time, I'd love to encourage you today to think about what is the one thing that you could start to change. And I hope this episode is resonating with you. So I am going to ask you to play Billy Piper, and I'm going to ask you to dance around and embody and move around. But whilst you're doing that, is to think about ditching one habit of necessary that you've created to survive over this last 15 months. So it could be that you've lowered your prices in your business, because, we tend to look at the bottom line, right? Many of us have had to do that, is look at that bottom line. What are the basics that need to come in, to cover when, for me, I host a lot of retreats and in-person events and do a lot of in-person networking. I think the online networking has been great, but actually I tend to be better if I just hang out with people in a much more casual environment. And so maybe you've lowered your prices to make sure that your basic needs have been covered and you've kind of stayed stuck in that space. And I often say to new entrepreneurs when they start, and it's, somewhere I started in my business and places that I've had to take myself back to at times when I've changed things in the business, is to, make sure that your basic needs are met, and then you can build on that. But sometimes we can also stay stuck in that just coping with the money coming in, just covering the basic needs and not actually building on top of that. So maybe it's for you, it's been lowering your prices. Maybe it's been not spending in your business. So really cutting your costs in your business and not actually maybe having the support or, various apps or whatever it might be that you need to continue to move forward. Maybe you've been putting your kids and your partner first. So your business has totally gone on the sideline. I know that's been a massive problem for so many women as part of surviving as a family unit and trying to run your business, but your partner earns more. So maybe your habit of necessary has been to ditch what you are doing and what you're called to do and what you're here to do. And maybe that stops today. Maybe it's some bad personal habits, drinking more wine. I definitely put my hand up to that one. Getting up later, although apparently Roald Dahl used to do that, to wake up super early and then do lots of creative work whilst lying in bed, and I can be guilty of that too. So they're two of my bad habits. So I'm going to ask you to put the song on, get the good vibes on, think of one habit that you really need to break, this bad habit that you've created that you need to break, or it might be, a good habit that you used to have that's just gone totally out the window that you want to reintroduce, and think of one thing that you really want to do in the next few months to really thrive and not be in this survival mode, and really get excited, which, as I said, it could be dancing in crowds, going to a festival, coming on one of my retreats, whatever it might be. Really tune into what that is for you. And I would always love for you to share with me on any social medias platforms as to what breaking the habit of necessary means to you, what habit you're going to be breaking, and what you're going to be bringing in as something that you want to do instead. So always feel free to share with me on socials. Always feel free to email me, lulu@lulumins.com, and we'll see you next week on She Rebel Radio.
Thanks for listening to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for women unlearning conventional rules and creating their businesses of significance. She Rebel Radio is executive produced by award-winning coach and advocate Lulu Mins. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit subscribe. And if you're feeling social, find Lulu Mins and the She Rebel Radio community using the links below.